G'day guys and girls. I've had a few people ask me how I do my skulls. Rather than type it every 10 minutes, I'd rather just make a video and show you all how it's done, and it's a lot easier to see through a video on how I do it. Alright, so here goes. Okay, before you start anything, the first thing you need to get is permission. So if you live at home with your mum and your dad, ask them first. And if you're married like me, get your wife's permission. Once you've got that, the things you're going to need are a pot filled with water, some bicarb soda or baking soda, a spoon to stir it with, and of course your skull. It can be a deer skull, fox skull, goat skull, whatever you're going to do. It's the same process: bigger skull, bigger pot, more bicarb soda. So it's not that complicated. Now you can remove a lot of this meat beforehand, but because it's such a little skull and there really isn't much meat on a fox skull, I'm not going to worry about it. It'll all pretty much fall off with the, that's why we use the bicarb soda. So just place it in the pot and add the bicarb soda. Now there's not an exact amount, just some's better than none. I'd say I'm going to put in about, say, 4 tablespoons, maybe 5 tablespoons, maybe a little bit more. it's not exact. And then just stir it around, dissolve that bicarb soda a little bit. Now the water I put in the pot was already hot from the tap, just so it doesn't take so long to boil. Now because there is a bit more meat on the top of the skull, I'm turning the skull upside down. And then you just take it, put it on the stove. This part of the process is pretty simple. It's just cooking the head. Now what you want to do is bring that water up to boil. Once it starts to boil, turn it down to a simmer, and then you just want to simmer. Now this process isn't difficult, but it takes time. It can take anywhere from 2 to 6 or 7 hours. I did a cow head that took 12 hours. So it's just a lengthy process. And what you want to do is, once the outside of the meat's cooked and sort of falling off, take it out, remove some of that meat, put it back in, reboil it. Now with a delicate fox head like this, you want to make sure that you don't lose the teeth. Okay, so when in that process, when you're taking the meat out, and I'll film a bit more after, make sure you don't lose the teeth. Okay, now the pot was brought up to boil, so it was fully boiling, and then I've turned it slightly down to about there, and that's about the rate you want it to simmer at. No more than that, and not really less than that, otherwise it would just take too long to cook. But that's about the simmer rate that you want. Alright, it's been boiling for almost an hour now, and you can see that a lot of the meat's come away. So what I'm going to do is take it out, cut some of that meat away, pull some of that meat off, and then put it back in the pot. Now what I do, so just take it off the boil. It's going to be too hot to touch straight away. So I get, where was that spoon there? Oh, down there. See? I get just like a whole ladle like this. Very carefully so you don't drop it. Put it in the sink. And what I do is I cool it down with some cold water first, and then you can handle it. And I'll remove all this stuff off the side and stuff, and try to get the eyes out and maybe the tongue and some of the other meat. Then you want to stick it back in and then keep boiling it. Now you might have to do this 3, 4, 5 times. It's important that it's cooked all the way through. It's important that it's cooked all the way through so that there's no meat left inside the bone. Because if you don't cook it properly and there's meat left inside the skull, the skull will end up rotting. And I've seen other people's skulls that have rotted on them, because although they got all the meat from the outside, inside the bone, the marrow inside wasn't cooked through, and that's what rotted. So make sure you do this process 3 or 4 times. Alright, so it's been boiling for about 2.5 hours now. So what I'm doing is just taking it off, cooling it down again like I showed you earlier. I wasn't able to get the eyes out before. I'm just going to cool the skull down. And I might even change the water and re-boil it. Now, fox skull's really, really delicate. These bones through here are really fragile. So if you see the skull lean over on the side, don't let it cook too long. Turn it over to the other side. Try keep it like that. I've been cooking it like that or like that. But I've been turning it up this way because there's a lot more meat left in here. Because if you cook it too much, that bone breaks. It doesn't matter. I've done other skulls where it's broken. You don't really notice it. But if you can, try not let it cook on either side of that fragile, weak bone for too long. Same with these fragile nose bones. And I'll just cool it down a bit further. It's been cooking long enough that the jaw should come out now, like you can see there. Now, and that's the tongue. I'll remove that in a second. But with the jaw and the bicarb soda, it breaks down cartilage and turns it to jelly. And you'll see in a second, if I pull this open carefully, the jaw's actually in 2 pieces. There you go. It's in 2 pieces. Now that's fine because you can glue that back together later, which I'll show you as well. But also now, I'm not sure, no, they haven't. The teeth will fall out. There's no, we'll just clean that off. It needs to cook. Oh, I just lost a tooth then, but that's alright. You won't notice it. These small teeth, I might even take out now and put them aside. Now they only go in one way, so it's pretty easy to tell which way, where they went, because when you're putting them all back, it's pretty obvious. What I might do, I didn't think they'd fall out. Just put a strainer in there. That'll save you from losing teeth. Should have done that first, but oh well, it's only one. See, I'm just gently prying these teeth out. That's still a bit tight. I might leave them in there. Just wash this a bit further. See, so I've cleaned as much meat off, but there's still blood in that in there, and so that's why you want to cook it more. Otherwise, if you leave it like that, it's going to rot on you. So just put that back in the pot, let it keep boiling. Just clean that out. I'm going to remove these fine teeth now, so I don't lose them as well. In there. Now, if you are going to lose any, it's always going to be those front ones, and same on the top skull there. So just, yeah, those ones are the ones you really got to watch. Put that back in the pot. As we're getting close, I might even turn that down a little bit. Now, just most of this meat, see with the bicarb soda, it literally just pulls away. It falls off like. See, now if I was to try to cut that out when it was still raw, there's a very good chance that you can break the bone. But if you just peel it all off now, it's a lot easier. See, a lot of that flesh, is just washing away. Look, you can just see it, all of it just washing away. Now I might stop here. Just take, if I can, take these out. I'm going to try separate them. So I've got lower jaw teeth and upper jaw teeth. So I'll put these in a little container and I'll save them for the peroxide, and then they can all go in with the peroxide and whiten. Right. See, now the canines are coming out, so I'm going to, and this top jaw seems to be coming out pretty easily where the bottom jaw wasn't. So I'm going to take all of them out. Now you might be worried that, oh, how am I going to know which hole these go back into? It's pretty obvious. Like, if the tooth doesn't go in there, it just won't go in there. And those molars are still pretty tight in there, so might have to keep cooking it with them in there. Yep. They don't come out, just don't try to force them too much. Just leave them there, they'll come out pretty easily after. Now, let's keep washing it off a little bit. Now, the brain cavity, I get a little hook, a bit of wire or something, and that brain just comes out of there, and then you can basically just wash it through like that, and just the brain will just end up washing out. But I'm going to continue cooking it a little bit further. And just clean all that out. But you can pretty much see that it's almost there, but you can still see blood and stuff in the skull. So I'm just going to keep cooking that a little bit further. I'm probably going to lower the heat now because there's not so much meat to protect it. I'm going to lower that heat down and then just slightly simmer it, maybe another hour, and then we'll see how we go. So just put that back in the pot. Trying to keep it that way down so that it doesn't not on the side, so it doesn't weaken those bones. And I might leave the skull in there longer than I'm going to leave the jaw bones in there, but you just watch that as you go. G'day guys. What I'm doing at the moment, I've already got, this is like a metal skewer, but you can use a bit of wire, and I've bent it like a hook. I've actually got two of them. That's for smaller skulls, and that's a bit bigger hook, and that's for the bigger skulls. And what I'm doing at the moment, I've taken the skull out of water, and I use this to pull the brain out. So, and the brain's just fatty, it's just fat mainly really. And I'll just scoop the brain out, piece by piece. Get most of it out that way. I won't show it all on the video, but you pretty much pull as much out and then you let water, just turn that down a bit. You let water trickle in there and wash it out. A lot of the brain will just wash out. When you've got most of the brain out and it's not blocking, the brain's not blocking the passage of water, the water will actually flow straight out its nose and get a lot of that stuff that's in there out as well. And any stuff that's in the optic nerve hole or any, stuff that's in the ear holes, that'll all just wash out. Just like that. And you can see it in the sink there. It's just basically washing out and shaking out of the brain. So you don't really have to scoop it much, you just scoop it to get it started, and then it'll pretty much just wash out, and then every now and then just have a scoop around in there, loosen it all off.
Yep.
And the brain will just come out. And then I'll just put that there. And then in here, I've pulled some of the teeth out. Some of them are still stuck in there. They're not coming out too easy because I'm still going to put the head back in the pot. So what I've done is I've taken the teeth out and I've put them just in egg cups. You can use little ceramic dishes, even bowls. And I've separated the lower teeth and the upper teeth. And because I still think that there's still optic nerve inside there, which is still alive, and if you leave that in there without cooking it, it'll rot. So what I've done is I've stuck them in the egg cups, and I'm just going to whack them in the microwave for a minute or two, and just let them cook and cook that optic nerve, the tooth nerve that's in there, so that it doesn't rot later. So at the moment I'm just going to keep cleaning the skull. Once I've cleaned as much out of it as I can, I'll stick it back in the pot, let it cook further, wash it, and then once it's fully clean, then we'll start the peroxide process. Okay, the skull's been all cleaned. I've washed it all out. As you can see, I've flushed water through there, through the brain stem and the brain cavity. I've flushed and cleaned all that out. There's no sinew left on those fine bones. I've flushed water through there, gave it a shake. There's no more veins left in the optic nerve. It's all totally clean. All the two teeth have been removed, and there's no like sinew or anything left in there either. It's pretty much clean. And same with the lower jaw. The teeth have been removed, and there's no sinew left in there. Now here we have they're the upper teeth, and here we have the lower teeth. I've kept them separate so I know, to help make it easier when I put them back in. And there were still bits of nerve left in there. So by sticking them in that little container, and I've just cooked away any possible nerve that might be left there. It's okay if it's still got a bit of slime in the sinew, because when we put it in the peroxide, all of that will just come off, and they'll be nice and clean and white. But it's still wet. So you can leave it like this and let it dry overnight. But for the sake of this video and getting it done, you can use a blow dryer, and I'm going to blow dry the skull and everything dry, and then we'll start the peroxide stage of this. The skull's been fully dried, and I've placed it in a ceramic bowl, and I've put the teeth into ceramic cups. And we're going to start pouring in the peroxide and start turning the skull white. Now what I've got here is a cream developer. You can get this from Priceline, or your local hairdressers will sell it. It's not very expensive. And I've used this bottle on another fox skull I did. And it's 40 vol, which is the strongest you can get, and it's 12% peroxide. It's the strongest you can get here in Australia without being a chemist or whatever. And what you do is just give the bottle a shake. And you just pour it over the skull. Now with my larger skulls, because I don't have a ceramic dish big enough or a microwave big enough, I use a paintbrush, and I paint it on with a paintbrush. And I use a hairdryer to activate the peroxide, because heat activates peroxide. and it makes it bubble up, and you'll see that after it's been in the microwave. Just make sure the teeth are covered. Put a bit more in here. Make sure the back of the head's got some on it. Now, you might just make sure it's fully covered. You might want to wear gloves because the peroxide can burn, but I'm not too fussed about it. Make sure it's all covered, place it in there. And then what I'm doing is I'm just using heat to activate the peroxide and make it work. You don't need a lot, just a little bit. This is just speeding it up. You could just leave it like that, but a little bit of heat just helps activate that peroxide. It might leave a bit of a strong smell in the house, but it'll go away. Just open up and just check it. A bit longer. And that heat will just activate that peroxide, make it bubble up and help turn that skull white. Okay, now I had it in the microwave for maybe a minute 15 seconds, and you can see how that peroxide's bubbled up and frothed up. That's pretty much what you want. And I stopped it halfway through and turned the skull upside down just so the top of the skull got covered in that peroxide as well. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it out of here and then I'm going to wash it. Don't tip the peroxide out yet, because if you're still not happy with how white it is, right, you can always put it back in there, let it sit in there in the microwave again, and then just let it sit a bit longer and it'll keep getting whiter. But I'm pretty confident that I'm happy with how white that looks at the moment. So I'm just going to wash that, dry that, and then I'm going to start gluing it back together. Okay, we've finished the peroxide process. I did end up sticking it back in for a little bit because I wasn't happy with how white it was. But now it's all been dried and it's all white and I'm happy with the colour. Now we're going to start gluing everything back together, and I just use this Bosch super glue, but any super glue, this is industrial strength, will do. And we're just going to start gluing the teeth back into the jaws. So, you know, you can start with the top jaw or the lower jaws. You just start gluing the teeth all the way around back in. Going to glue the teeth together on the lower jaw. We're going to glue the lower jaw together like that. And then we're also going to glue the jaw back into the skull. And you can see that position right there. It's like almost a ball and socket joint. That's where the jaw sits and pivots. And you can glue that to the desired how far you want it open. So I'm going to start to do that now, glue it back together. But I'm going to speed the film up because it might take a while. And watch how we go. Alright, the head's all finished, teeth are all glued in, the jaw's glued in, and we're done. Now, I'm pretty happy with it. Now a little hint, I know the video was a bit fast, so what I do is, like with the lower jaw, this molar here and the canine, there's only like, and same with the other side, they're pretty obvious where they go, where these ones can be a little bit more confusing. So what I do is I started with those two, then those two, and sort of put a tooth in that hole. If it doesn't look quite right, try it in the other hole, and you'll know straight away, nah, that one was wrong or that one was right. And I glued those 4 in first, and then what I did is because they're in pairs like this, so I sorted out the pairs like that, and then I tried it in there. Yep, that fitted, and I actually put all 6 of these in without gluing them first, made sure they were right, and then I glued them in. And I did the same with these. So I identified the pairs, found out where they went, put them in, made sure they fit, then glued them in. And same with the front teeth. Those front teeth, that's the tooth I lost in the sink earlier. But I did the same thing there, put them in, make sure that they're all in the right place, and then glue them in. And it's same with the upper jaw. So on the upper jaw, pretty obvious where this molar, and the canine go. You sort out those 6, and then in the pairs, and then make sure they fit, then glue them in, and same with the front teeth here. Now, this here will make it a little bit easier to know which way the teeth go around. If you look at that, see how each tooth here might be a bit more obvious on the lower jaw. See on the lower jaw how there's like a double rise in the point of the tooth. The smaller rise is always at the back. You see that? At the back, at the back. And then same on the other side. It's at the back. And then it's the same with the upper jaw, if you can see that clearly enough. The smaller eyes is towards the back of the skull, and they'll just follow that pattern. And another thing to remember is when you're gluing the jaw in, put a fair decent amount of glue in there, hold it and just blow on it and let it dry, and then you might have to just squeeze a bit more glue into here, and then for this part to dry so that the jaw just doesn't close on you, it takes about 15 minutes, so you might just have to hold it there and blow on it, even use a hairdryer to speed it up a little bit. And then you'll feel it, like once it's rigid, there just won't be any movement there once the glue's fully dried. Then if you're still worried about it once it is dry, just like I said, just squeeze a little bit more glue in there. You can do it from the back, squeeze a little bit more glue in there. So there we go. Right, I know I'm going to get questions on us about how I did this mount, so I'll just answer it in this video. What I've got is just oak, scrap oak that I cut out with a jigsaw, drew the shape that I wanted, and then routed the edge, same with the base. Now this part here is an actual tree branch that I went and just picked up from like the local park, sanded it up, cut it to the angle that I wanted, and then I stained the whole lot and varnished it. Now, to hold the skull onto this shield, what I did is you can see it there, I've cut a bit of dowel, the same size as the hole in the base of the skull, and I've pushed it through the wood and then cut it off and sanded it flat at the back. And what that does is it acts like a hook to help hold the skull from sliding. But what the skull will want to do is it'll want to pivot from side to side. So what I've done is and to stop the skull also from falling forward like that, I've put a bit of super glue in here, and then just under there on the inside I've put some super glue to stop it from twisting, and the glue on the back there to stop it from falling. So that's how I did that. And with the one I've just done to show you guys, if you've got any ideas on how I should mount this one or what I can do with this one, please let us know in a video or just write it in a message in the comments box. Thanks guys. Now I'm just going to finish up by saying that don't be afraid to try it. You know, if you're doing it and you stuff something up and you've ruined it, don't worry about it. Go shoot another fox. Try it again, but don't be afraid to try it. You're never going to know until you try it. Now, I'm not an expert. I'm a carpenter by trade. This is a hobby for me, but it's not that hard once you understand and know the process and you've done it before. And, you know, start with something small like this and then work your way up to something, well, big like this. This is a steer skull that I got given to by a farmer. It took me a long time to do this and it was a lot of work, but I'm pretty happy with the end result. And this is something that I did to just spice it up a little bit. Anyway, so don't be afraid to give it a go, guys.